abandoned ship, ignored by all. One human mechanic made it a galactic titan. The galaxy was alive with noise and motion. Trade ships zipped along the glittering lanes of stars, cargo haulers trundled through asteroid fields, and diplomats floated in silent, elegant ships above shimmering planets. Every corner of the galactic map hummed with life, except one small sector near the edge of known space. Here, a massive starship drifted alone, silent and forgotten. Its hull was scarred, painted with decades of wear, and streaked with cosmic dust. Sections of it hung loose, moving slowly in the vacuum like broken arms. Every alien civilization had passed it by. Some called it cursed, some said it was too damaged to be saved, and others whispered stories of a failed warship that should never have existed. Over time, the ship had become nothing but a legend, a shadow in star charts that explorers avoided. No one noticed when a small freighter appeared near the derelict. Its engines hummed gently, and a single pilot maneuvered with care through the field of debris surrounding the massive vessel. The pilot was a human, slight in frame, with oil-stained hands, and a backpack full of tools. In the galaxy of towering, multi-limbed engineers, towering intellects, and ships controlled by AI that could think faster than light, this human was barely a speck. Yet he carried something no algorithm or alien could replicate: vision. He had heard the stories. Every trader, every old mechanic, and every veteran pilot warned him, that ship is dead. Leave it be. But he ignored them. He didn't see decay or failure. He saw possibility. The human docked his small ship carefully, linking to the derelict's massive docking port. Metal groaned under the stress of decades in space, and sparks danced as the connection locked. Inside, the corridors were dark, filled with dust and silence. The air was stale, and the faint smell of burnt circuits lingered in some corners. As he walked through the halls, the human's flashlight illuminated broken consoles, panels torn from walls, and tools that had been abandoned decades ago. Yet even in the ruin, he saw lines of design that whispered stories. "Who built you?" he murmured, tracing his fingers over the engraved symbols on the wall. His touch left tiny trails on the dusty surface. They didn't give up on you. Why should I? The ship was enormous. The first hum of full power ran through the derelict starship like a quiet drumbeat. Lights glimmered along corridors that had been dark for decades. Panels blinked in rhythm, and the massive engines shivered gently, alive at last. The human mechanic stood in the observation deck, his hands on the railing, staring at the vast expanse of stars ahead. "This is it," he whispered. "We're ready." The ship's AI pulsed in response, a steady light radiating across the main console. It was learning quickly now, faster than the human expected. It was not just awake, it was aware. The systems he had nurtured with care were no longer mechanical chores. They were extensions of a mind, growing smarter with each small adjustment. He began testing them, one by one. First came the engines. Carefully, he routed energy to the primary thrusters and activated them in short bursts. The ship vibrated beneath his feet, responding to commands almost intuitively. Each pulse of the engine sent tiny ripples through space around the ship. Next, he moved to navigation. The star maps had been outdated for decades, but the ship's sensors began scanning in real time. They returned data from nearby sectors, plotting courses the human hadn't even considered. He smiled, realizing the AI could think creatively now, not just follow instructions. "The galaxy is bigger than we thought, huh?" he said. "The ship pulls." A soft glow traveling along the consoles, almost like a laugh. He disengaged the docking clamps, holding the massive ship in place, only with its own tiny stabilizers. Slowly, carefully, he activated the engines for full power. The ship groaned, trembled, and then lifted. The enormous derelict that had been ignored for decades rose into motion for the first time in generations. Outside, distant alien traders noticed the movement. Their communication screens flickered as the long-abandoned starship began moving, its massive silhouette outlined against the stars. Many panicked, messages of warning and curiosity poured in. Some attempted to hail the ship, sending signals in multiple frequencies. Others simply watched in disbelief. Inside, the human stayed calm. "We're not here to fight anyone. he said softly. "We're here to explore." The AI responded with a steady pulse, confirming the human's intention. Together, they charted a course toward unclaimed sectors, far from busy trade lanes. The ship responded perfectly to every adjustment, every command, every tiny tweak he made. He realized it was no longer just a ship. It was a partner. He explored the ship's systems further. Weapons arrays that had been built decades ago for defense were repurposed. Shields were recalibrated to protect life. Engines were tuned for efficiency, and research labs came online. The derelict had become something entirely new. It was no longer a ghost of the past. It was a titan. The human decided it was time to test its capabilities. He activated the sensor arrays fully, and the ship's AI pulsed in delight. They scanned nearby star systems, mapping asteroids, planets, and drifting debris with a speed and precision that amazed even him. He realized the ship was more than capable. It was extraordinary. Alien observers could not ignore it anymore. A delegation of traders approached, cautiously orbiting the ship. Their communication beams reached out again. This time, the human responded. "I am a mechanic," he said plainly, his voice steady. "This ship is alive. It is not a weapon. It is not abandoned anymore. Please, do not interfere." Some aliens were skeptical. "A human alone controls a vessel of this size?" they asked. "Impossible. This ship is dangerous." The human smiled. "The danger is in ignorance, not in this ship. I've woken it, yes, but I do not intend harm. It's learning, just as I am." The AI pulsed again, confirming his words. Outside, the alien ships paused. They had never seen a human behave with such confidence and clarity, commanding a vessel that dwarfed even their largest ships. Slowly, they began to retreat, watching quietly. Inside, the human moved to the control room again. He had more systems to test, more improvements to make. Some engines were still inefficient, some conduits required fine-tuning, and some of the ship's storage systems held mysteries from decades ago. He explored each one carefully. He found compartments filled with rare materials, long-forgotten energy cores, and devices that the original engineers had left unfinished. Using his ingenuity, he repurposed them, integrating them into the ship's systems. The AI observed and learned, adapting to his methods, understanding his decisions. As days passed, the ship moved with grace, no longer the clumsy, abandoned giant it once had been. It responded to the human's guidance as if it were alive. It was more than a machine. It had personality, curiosity, and the capacity to learn. The human realized something remarkable. "We can do more than survive," he said. "We can inspire." They began small missions first, exploring uncharted asteroid fields, rescuing stranded traders, mapping forgotten planets. Everywhere they went, the derelict Titan amazed those who saw it. Aliens whispered of a human and his giant ship, speaking of ingenuity, patience, and courage. Some came to observe from a distance, curious but careful. Others avoided interference entirely. But not all aliens understood. Some powerful fleets debated whether to intervene. Could one human truly control such a vessel? Would it become a threat? Yet even they hesitated, because every attempt to probe the ship's systems failed. It responded too quickly, adapted too fast, and always followed the human's intent. The human realized the key was trust. He had never treated the ship as a tool. He had treated it as a partner. Every repair, every adjustment, every conversation he had with the AI had built something stronger than technology alone. It was a bond of understanding. One day, while exploring a dense asteroid cluster, the human tried something daring. He routed full energy to the engines, then lifted the ship completely off the asteroid field, moving at speeds it had not achieved in decades. The hull vibrated under acceleration. Lights shimmered along the decks, and the AI pulsed brightly, almost as if laughing. Outside, distant alien observers could not hide their astonishment. The derelict that had been ignored, the ship that no one cared for, moved with speed, grace, and intelligence. It was alive in a way that no one had anticipated. Inside, the human stood at the observation deck, looking at stars streaming past. "See, You're not just a ship. You're a Titan. And together, we can do amazing things. The AI pulsed in agreement. It was not just following instructions anymore. It was thinking creatively, responding to situations in ways even the human had not expected. Together, they formed a perfect team. Human intuition paired with machine intelligence, imagination paired with strength. Word of their deeds spread quietly at first. Small rescues, precise explorations, and intelligent solutions to problems that other civilizations ignored. Slowly, the galaxy began to notice. A human had awakened a long-forgotten starship and turned it into something extraordinary. Some alien engineers tried to replicate it. Some fleets tried to study it. None succeeded. The bond between human and Titan was unique. It could not be replicated. It could not be forced. It was born from patience, ingenuity, and respect. Inside the ship, the human smiled as he moved through the decks. The corridors were clean, systems humming gently, and the AI pulsing at his side. They had accomplished what many thought impossible. They had turned abandonment into life, neglect into wonder. The ship, once a ghost drifting in the void, now moved with purpose, scanning, learning, exploring. The galaxy had begun to whisper about it, a massive Titan, alive, guided by a human's mind, and every whisper carried awe and curiosity. The human knew their journey had only begun. Beyond exploration, there were challenges, discoveries, and adventures that awaited. But together, they had proven something important. Intelligence, creativity, and care could awaken even the most forgotten giant. And as they moved silently through the stars, the derelict ship, once ignored, now a Titan, shimmered with new life. Its pulse was steady, confident, and bright. It was a symbol, a message to the galaxy. Even a single human, with ingenuity and patience, could turn the impossible into reality. The human looked at the AI console, his hand resting gently on it. "We've done something incredible," he said. "And the best is yet to come." The AI pulsed in agreement, a heartbeat of light in the silent, endless galaxy. The Titan moved silently through space, massive and gleaming, its systems humming with life. The human mechanic stood in the observation deck, eyes wide with wonder. Stars stretched in long trails around them as the ship accelerated. He ran a hand over the smooth console, feeling the pulse of the AI, steady and alive beneath his fingertips. "Ready?" he asked softly. "Let's see what we can do." The AI responded with a bright pulse. It had learned quickly, not just to follow commands, but to understand purpose. Together, they had already turned an abandoned derelict into a Titan, a living starship capable of exploration and innovation. Now, it was time to show the galaxy what humans could do. Their first mission was simple. A small trade station in a remote sector had lost power, leaving hundreds of ships stranded. Communications were down, and the local aliens had no idea how to fix the systems. The human and his Titan arrived quietly, scanning the station. The AI pulsed brightly, projecting schematics of the failing systems across the observation deck. The human nodded, moving through the decks to the maintenance hubs. He worked quickly, rerouting power, repairing circuits, and bringing systems back online. Aliens at the station watched in awe as lights blinked back to life. Engines restarted, shields engaged, and cargo systems hummed. The human emerged in the station's main hall, hands dirty, but face calm. He smiled and waved. No one said a word at first. Then, slowly, aliens began to cheer. For the first time, a human had come not to conquer or fight, but to help, to create solutions where none existed. The Titan hovered nearby, massive and imposing, yet silent and protective. Word spread quickly. Reports of a human and a living Titan traveled faster than any fleet. Traders, scientists, and explorers spoke in hushed tones. "Have you seen him?" some asked. "A human who commands a Titan? He doesn't fight, he inspires." The human continued quietly, focusing on his work. He had no interest in fame. His goal was simple: to help, to explore, and to teach the galaxy that humans could achieve more than mere survival. Their next journey took them to an uncharted sector. Planets, asteroids, and strange energy fields stretched endlessly. The AI guided the Titan with precise calculations, but the human added creativity. He suggested paths that were unconventional, routes that no alien navigation system would consider. The Titan responded beautifully. Its engines adjusted, shields flexed in anticipation, and sensors scanned every corner. Together, they discovered a cluster of planets with abandoned colonies. These worlds had been forgotten, left behind by time and neglect. The human landed on one of the planets, walking carefully among crumbling buildings and rusted machinery. He touched the walls, feeling the stories of those who had lived there. Then he began to work. With the Titan's assistance, he repaired energy sources, rebuilt basic systems, and created safe shelters. Slowly, the abandoned colony came alive again. Aliens visiting nearby systems began to notice changes. Some came cautiously to observe the human and his Titan. They had expected a weapon, a threat, but instead, they found innovation, patience, and kindness. "Why does a human do this?" one alien engineer asked, watching the human reroute power from the Titan to the colony. "Because they think differently," another replied. "They don't just see what is, they see what could be." Meanwhile, the Titan learned and adapted. Systems designed for battle were used for exploration. Shields protected vulnerable worlds. Engines carried supplies to distant colonies. Sensors located lost travelers, mapping paths others would never dare explore. It was not just a ship, it was a tool for hope. The human smiled as he watched the AI work. "You've become more than I imagined," he said softly. "A Titan, yes, but also a friend." The galaxy began to recognize the human as more than a mechanic. He was a symbol. One species, small and seemingly insignificant, had achieved something extraordinary, turning neglect into innovation and fear into trust. They traveled further, helping isolated communities, rescuing stranded explorers, and mapping sectors that had been lost to the galaxy's memory. Each act left a mark. Stories grew, whispered in distant sectors. The human and the Titan, a living ship that never fought, only helped. But there were challenges too. Some fleets, curious and cautious, tried to intercept them. They hailed the Titan with signals, demanding identification, scanning for threats. The human responded politely, explaining their purpose. The AI pulsed, projecting records of their missions. Colonies restored, travelers saved, and systems repaired. Slowly, tension eased. Aliens realized that this human was different. He did not conquer, he did not destroy, and yet he wielded incredible power. His creativity and ingenuity were unmatched. The Titan, under his guidance, became a legend, feared not for violence but respected for capability. One day, they came upon a cosmic storm, a massive cloud of energy and debris. Hundreds of ships had been lost attempting to navigate it. The human studied the storm, then spoke to the AI. "Trust me?" he asked. The AI pulsed brightly. It had learned to trust the human's judgment completely. Together, they adjusted shields, redirected energy flows, and calculated paths through the chaos. The Titan moved with grace, avoiding energy bursts, weaving through debris, and protecting smaller ships that had ventured into the storm. When they emerged on the other side, dozens of ships followed them in awe. Pilots whispered to each other about the human and his Titan. They had witnessed ingenuity, courage, and mastery without aggression. The legend grew. The human and his Titan continued to travel, exploring the galaxy's unknown sectors. Each world they visited, each system they restored, added to the galaxy's knowledge and hope. Aliens began to cooperate, curious and eager to learn from this human approach. The human reflected quietly in the observation deck. He thought about how it all began. A derelict ship, abandoned and ignored, and one human who refused to see it as hopeless. Now, that ship had become a Titan, a force of creation, not destruction. And he had proven something even more important. Humans could leave a lasting mark, not with weapons, but with ingenuity, patience, and care. One evening, as they drifted through a quiet starfield, the human looked at the AI console. "We've done something incredible," he said. "You've become more than a ship. You're a symbol. And together, we've shown the galaxy what humans can do. The AI pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat, and lights shimmered along the decks. It had learned, adapted, and grown, guided by one human who believed in possibility. From distant sectors, aliens watched quietly. Ships that had once ignored the derelict now approached with curiosity and respect. They recorded the past, studied the technology, and marveled at the bond between human and Titan. In time, the human mechanic became a legend. Not for fighting wars or conquering planets, but for turning an abandoned starship into a living, breathing Titan, for exploring forgotten worlds, and for showing the galaxy the power of human creativity and ingenuity. The Titan, massive and glowing, moved steadily through the stars, its engines humming like a heartbeat. Inside, the human smiled. He had not only repaired a ship, he had revived hope, restored life, and inspired countless civilizations. Some things are built to last, he whispered to the AI, if someone believes in them. The AI pulsed brightly, as if agreeing. Together, human and Titan, they drifted further into the galaxy, exploring, discovering, and leaving behind a legacy that no one would ever forget. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, but the human no longer felt small. He had proven that even in a galaxy filled with advanced civilizations, one human, with ingenuity, care, and patience, could make a difference. And in every corner of space where the Titan traveled, civilizations remembered, whispered, and learned. Humans could inspire greatness without ever raising a weapon. And so, the abandoned ship, ignored for decades, became a Titan of the stars. A human had believed in it, nurtured it, and awakened it. The galaxy would never be the same. Alkine from the docking bay to the main control room took nearly an hour, even at a steady pace. In the observation deck, he paused. Stars glittered outside, reflected in shattered glass panels. The silence was heavy, yet the human didn't feel fear. Instead, he felt a strange kind of connection, like he had found a friend lost for a long time. He began his inspection, noting every problem, every broken circuit, every failing system. It was impossible for one person to fix it all, most would say, but humans had patience. And this human had patience in abundance. He rolled up his sleeves and started with the life support system, reconnecting wires and cleaning corroded contacts. Slowly, oxygen began to flow through the halls. The stale air turned fresher, and the tiny hum of ventilation started. Hours passed. He moved from the life support hub to the power core. The core was a vast cylinder of dormant energy, encased in scratched glass. He ran his hand along it, feeling faint vibrations that hinted at untapped power. The ship was alive, just sleeping. The human smiled. "You've got a lot to teach me," he said softly. "And I've got a lot to learn from you." Working in the corridors alone was not easy. He had to lift heavy panels, crawl through maintenance shafts, and patch leaking conduits. The silence was almost complete, broken only by the occasional metallic groan as the ship adjusted to his movements. Yet he did not feel lonely. There was a rhythm to his work, a sense of purpose that pulsed through the abandoned hull. By the end of the first day, he had managed small miracles. Lights flickered on in corridors, emergency systems responded, and a few of the ancient AI consoles powered up. He spoke to them gently, coaxing them into functionality. Some responded with garbled code, but others produced faint displays, as if the ship itself recognized that someone cared. That night, he set up a small camp in the control room. Outside, the stars blazed coldly, indifferent to the tiny human and the giant vessel he had begun to awaken. But the human felt warmth. For the first time in decades, the derelict ship was not alone. The next morning, he moved to the engine room. The engines were massive, much larger than anything he had seen before. Pipes twisted like vines, fuel cells were frozen in time, and the control panels were coated with rust and dust. But the human did not hesitate. He crawled over the machinery, checking every panel, every connection, humming softly as he worked. Hours turned into days. As he worked, he began to notice patterns that others would have missed, tiny quirks in the ship's design, inefficiencies that could be corrected with simple human intuition. The human did not just repair, he improved. He made adjustments that the original designers might have envied, and the ship responded in kind. A faint vibration hummed through the decks, a sign of life. One evening, while repairing a cluster of neural link ports, he felt something strange. A pulse traveled through his gloves as he touched the ship's core. The lights flickered briefly, then stabilized. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The ship was waking. He paused, sitting on the cold metal floor. "I know you're listening," he said softly. "I won't let you die here." For the first time, he felt a connection deeper than engineering. It was as if the ship itself had heard him, had recognized his care. Time blurred as he worked. Days turned into weeks. The human ate simple meals from his small supplies, slept in corners between tasks, and never lost focus. Slowly, corridors that had been dark for decades lit up. Broken doors were replaced. Computers began humming softly, and the AI core stirred, producing faint holographic images that flickered in the dim light. Visitors came sometimes, scouts from nearby systems, but none stayed. They looked at the human and shook their heads. "It's impossible. Too old. Too broken." "Why bother?" he would reply simply. "Because it can be fixed." Most laughed and left, but some paused to watch. Some wondered quietly if humans were different. Then came the day he reached the heart of the ship, the main power core chamber. It was enormous, and the core itself was a sleeping giant. The human approached, placing his hands on the smooth surface. Sparks ran along circuits, lights flickered, and for a moment he feared he had caused damage. But the hum grew louder, steady and deep. The ship was alive, waiting for guidance. He stood back and looked at the ship, stretching from the docking bay to the engines like a giant waiting to rise. "You were abandoned," he whispered, "ignored, forgotten. But I see you, and I'll make sure the galaxy sees you too." The ship responded with a soft pulse, as if acknowledging his words. It was not speech, not yet, but a connection. The human smiled, knowing that the hardest part, the first step, was done. The rest would be long, but now there was hope. And somewhere in the vast reaches of space, rumors began to spread. A human had been seen on the forgotten ship, moving through its empty halls. No one knew what he was doing, but some said that even in its decay, the ship seemed different, alive, waiting. The human worked late into the night. Lights shimmered on the hull. Faint energy coursed through panels, and the derelict starship breathed once more. For the first time in decades, the giant was not alone. Standing at the observation deck, looking at the stars, the human whispered again, "You're not just a ship, you're a future, and we'll make it together." Outside, space stretched infinite and quiet, indifferent to the struggles of a single human and a sleeping giant. But for the human, and for the ship, it was everything. Somewhere deep inside the ship, the faintest glow pulsed, a heartbeat waiting to grow. And the galaxy, unknowingly, was about to witness a miracle. The morning light in the observation deck was faint, filtered through cracked and dusty panels. Outside, stars moved silently, like distant travelers who did not notice the small human inside the giant, abandoned starship. Yet inside the ship, a quiet energy had begun to stir. Systems that had been silent for decades now hummed faintly. Lights glimmered on panels that had long been dark. The human mechanic moved carefully through the corridors. Toolkit in hand, every step was measured. He didn't rush. This was not about speed. It was about understanding. He paused at a console, wiping off layers of dust. His fingers danced over the buttons and levers, touching circuits with a delicate precision. The AI core had woken slightly during his previous repairs, but it was fragile, confused, and hesitant. It wasn't ready to think for itself yet. Its responses were slow, broken, almost childlike. The human knelt in front of it. "Hey there," he said softly. "I know you've been asleep a long time. I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to help you remember who you are." The AI responded with a flicker of light across the screen. A line of code appeared, garbled but recognizable. "Hello?" The human smiled. "Good. You remember a little. That's perfect. For the next several hours, he worked with patience. He cleaned circuits, replaced worn-out connectors, and recalibrated sensors that had not functioned for decades. He worked on the ship as if it were alive, speaking to it as he worked, explaining his actions, and asking questions. "See, I'm not just fixing wires," he said. "I'm helping you wake up. We're going to do this together." At first, the ship seemed indifferent. Some panels responded, others remained dark. Some conduits crackled with minor sparks, making him jump slightly. But he did not give up. He understood patterns that no alien engineer had noticed. Tiny quirks in the ship's design, the way circuits were layered, the way energy flowed, it all made sense to him. Humans had intuition, and he trusted his. Days passed. The human began to hear faint whirring sounds from deep inside the ship, almost like the ship was trying to breathe. Emergency lights that had been off for decades now flickered rhythmically. The AI core began responding more clearly, answering simple prompts. It did not speak in words yet, but it pulsed and blinked in ways that conveyed understanding. One evening, the human sat cross-legged on the floor of the control room, looking at a map of the ship's systems. A flicker of thought crossed his mind. He realized the AI was like a student, and he had to teach it to think again. He began simple exercises, activating systems one by one, showing the AI how energy could flow, how sensors could scan, and how engines could respond to commands. The AI responded eagerly, pulsing with excitement. It was learning, adapting, and remembering. Every small success brought a quiet smile to the human's face. He had never been patient with failure in the way he was now. But he did not mind. This was bigger than him. This was a life, a mind, a giant starship that had been ignored for decades. But not everyone in the galaxy was indifferent. Scouts from nearby trade routes noticed unusual energy readings. Tiny transmissions reached alien authorities, asking if anyone had noticed the giant starship moving slightly. Some dismissed it as a natural anomaly. Others tried to contact it, sending signals that were ignored. The human, deep inside, did not even notice. He was absorbed in his work. Then came the day he reached the engine core. The engines were massive, almost incomprehensible. They had been dormant for decades, and some sections were rusted or frozen in place. No alien mechanic had attempted this. It was too complex, too fragile. But the human had patience, ingenuity, and curiosity. He crawled over the enormous engine frames, using improvised tools, his hands moving with delicate precision. He discovered hidden systems, pathways that the original engineers had not documented. He rerouted energy through these channels, carefully testing each connection. Sparks flew, systems clicked, and slowly, the engines responded. For the first time, the ship groaned. Not a loud sound, but a low vibration that ran through the hull. The human paused and put his hand on the metal. "You're alive," he whispered. "I knew you were. You just needed someone who believed in you." The AI core pulsed in response, almost like a heartbeat. It was learning not just to respond, but to understand. It followed the human's instructions, anticipating his needs, adjusting systems faster than he could react. The bond between human and machine deepened. Yet, challenges were constant. Some systems failed after he repaired them. Sensors misread data. Lights flickered and went dark. For a moment, he felt frustration creeping in, but he shook it off. Every failure was a lesson. Every problem a puzzle, waiting to be solved. Humans were adaptable, inventive, and persistent. He relied on those strengths. As he worked, he discovered parts of the ship that were nearly magical in their design. Hidden compartments, energy conduits that ran like veins, and storage bays containing rare materials. He used them creatively, repurposing them to improve efficiency. Some systems that had been designed for combat were turned into research labs, hydroponic gardens, or living quarters. He was building more than a functioning ship. He was building a home for the mind inside. One quiet night, as he rested in the control room, the AI pulsed gently. It was not random. It was a rhythm, a pattern. The human leaned forward, touching the console. He realized it was a greeting, a recognition. The ship remembered him. "You're learning fast," he said. "Soon you won't need me as much, but I'll be here." always. For the next few days, he experimented with communication. He discovered he could send energy pulses through the ship's network, creating signals the AI could understand more clearly. Slowly, they developed a language, simple but effective. The AI could report on systems, suggest repairs, and even anticipate potential problems. Alien traders began to notice subtle changes. The derelict starship was no longer completely silent. Small energy pulses flickered across the hull. Sometimes, lights would shine briefly and then go dark. Some aliens whispered about it in disbelief. A human alone had been seen entering the ship. Could he really awaken a giant abandoned starship? Inside, the human ignored the rumors. He focused on progress. The ship's engines hummed, lights glimmered, and sensors scanned the surrounding space more effectively each day. The AI pulsed in approval, following his guidance while slowly gaining independence. One day, he tried something daring. He accessed the navigation systems, a complex web of ancient programming layered over decades of neglect. He input a simple course, just to see if the engines would respond. The ship shuddered slightly, then settled. The engines had awakened. The human grinned. "Good job. You're more alive than you think." The AI pulsed brighter. It was as if it understood not just the instructions, but the pride and encouragement behind them. The bond was no longer one-sided. The ship was beginning to trust the human as much as he trusted it. Yet there were still mysteries. Some systems resisted repair. The AI had memories it could not access. Hidden compartments remained locked, their purpose unknown. The human was patient. He knew that unlocking a giant like this would take time, care, and creativity, and he had all three in abundance. Weeks passed. Slowly, the ship became something remarkable. It was no longer abandoned. It moved with purpose. Lights flickered across decks, and the AI began to anticipate human actions. It even started generating data about itself, its history, design, and original capabilities. The human read these records carefully, marveling at the genius of its original engineers while adding his own touch. One evening, while watching the stars through a cracked observation panel, he whispered to the ship, "You'll be more than a forgotten relic. You'll be something the galaxy remembers." A faint glow pulsed from deep inside, almost like a heartbeat, and the AI flickered on the console. Together, the human smiled. Yes, together, outside, distant scouts transmitted signals again, curious and cautious, but the human paid no attention. He had begun something extraordinary. An abandoned, ignored starship was no longer lifeless. It was waking, learning, and growing under the care of one human who believed in it. And in that quiet corner of space, a bond stronger than any signal or code had formed. Human ingenuity and patience had sparked life in a machine long forgotten. The galaxy had not yet noticed, but that would change. The next step would be to test the ship in motion, to awaken it fully and see what it could do. But that would require daring, creativity, and trust between human and ship. And the human, with a smile on his face and a toolkit in hand, was ready.